Coming up is a conversation with my good buddy Kyle Van Duzen of the Admin Bar. I reached out to him specifically because I wanted to talk about email marketing, something that I fully understand the power of and hear people sing the praises of all the time, but I am terribly inconsistent. On my website, I have my email sign up and it simply says, sign up for the most inconsistent newsletter this side of the Mississippi, which is good for a laugh, but beyond that, it's not good for a whole lot more. So I wanted to touch base with him just to hear about how he does things. And I think whether you create websites for your clients or you create digital products, our conversation is going to be relevant for you, and it will really help you uncover why you should start doing email marketing. I hope to really implement this in my own business coming up. And with that, my name is Jonathan Jernigan. Welcome to another episode of Inside Link, and let's go ahead and jump on over. So Kyle, of course, glad to have you back again. Many times you've been on my channel, I've been on yours a lot, but I wanted to specifically talk to you about email marketing. And really the idea for me is that I'm not very good at it. I don't do anything crazy. I even struggle to just like in something like ConvertKit, understand like tags and segmentation and different lists and those kinds of things. So I just wanted to run some scenarios by you, kind of hear your how you do it, and then just go from there. So just chit chat about email marketing in general. I think it's been very fruitful for you, and it's kind of like, other than YouTube, your kind of main outlet, right? It's like email, Facebook group, and YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, the Facebook group's probably the biggest like interaction, people conversing together. Email is definitely the most like valuable as far as conversions and making money and things like that. No question, email's number one, and it's not even close. But I mean, I'll be glad to entertain all your questions and tell you exactly what I do, but I don't get super fancy with all the tags and all those kinds of things either. I'm sure there's a lot I could learn and optimize things even better. I do a little bit of it, but I think number one is you got to have like good content that people want to read, and you got to start there. And then it doesn't matter how many different ways you tag people or automate things. If they don't want to hear from you, it's not going to do you any good,
Yeah. Okay. So there's kind of two arms for me. One of which is I have the blog sign up on my tutorial website. So for whatever tutorial you show up on, but there's such a broad range of things. Some could be old Oxygen tutorials, some could be business topics, some could be live streams. And thinking about the way to kind of segment people to sort of understand their interests, like why they signed up. You can see what page they signed up from. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. But then also the other kind of arm is I have a small little travel blog that I've shared with you. And I stuck an email sign up on it, and it's gotten hundreds of signups. And so, of course, me being me, I've done nothing with it. And I was doing kind of a look into my own stuff, especially with something really cool that Kyle's put together that will come soon. Can't convey that yet, but that this thing that you'll see soon made me really look into some of the things that I'm doing. And I thought, I have such potential with email. And I think so many people watching this hopefully do too, whether it's your own clients. I'm going to go off on a slight tangent because I just remembered. But, I just exported a list from my bookkeeping system of all of my Cure Plan clients at the beginning of this year, in January 2023. And I shared this with you in Table. I emailed them and just said, hey, got a New Year's promotion for an SEO plan. And I had like 8 different people take me up on like a one-time $750 fee just from one simple email. And it's like, it doesn't have to be some massive list. So anyway, all of those thoughts together made me think I would really like to just talk to somebody like you that does this regularly and just make a stab at doing a better job of it, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, you're on the right track with like realizing that there's so much, the money's in the banana stand, the money's in the list, that's where the money is. But not only that, it's the key to building relationships and staying top of mind with people. I think the riskiest thing you did there was have a list. We'll just talk about this specific thing with your agency, right? Emailing all your customers. I get nervous when I do that, or when I hear people talking about doing that. Comes up in Table, comes up inside the admin bar. The first thing I ask is like, well, how often are you emailing your customers? Like before you email them an offer, how regularly are you just speaking to them? And the answer is generally like never. I'm never emailing them unless we're like working on a project. I'm not just like nurturing that relationship at all. So When you don't do any of that nurturing and then you just show up in their inbox saying, hey, I'd like $750 from you, you'll get some to convert, sure. But I think your conversion was way lower than it could have been had you been nurturing those people. That's like, the cousin that comes around only during Christmas to like get their Christmas gifts, but then is nowhere to be seen when anybody needs any kind of help. That's kind of what you're doing in those situations. So I think the huge key to email and how the success I've seen from it is just being consistent with it, not asking for things every time, giving, giving, giving,
Yeah.
giving. And then when you have an ask, it's not awkward at all because you've been showing up every week, every other week, every month, if that's, your cadence for sending out emails. But if you're showing up and providing value all the time, then you don't got to feel awkward or weird about asking for something. And you've built a relationship that people are super eager to support you or check out what you're doing, or you've built tons of trust with them. So that for me is the scariest thing about what you did with that is like I would have encouraged you to have the patience that I never have either, but say, hey, why don't you wait 3 months on that offer and start sending out like a bi-weekly email and kind of warm these people up a little bit before you drop something on them,
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good point. I was gonna do some quick math here because I recall I sent it to something like 54, maybe 50 something clients. Um, I always do the wrong direction on the calculator. I always do it backwards and have to do it again. Yeah, so I mean that was basically if it was 54 people, that was basically a 14% conversion rate, and I think that's good. But I
It's
think when
huge.
people talk about emailing your existing customers, it should be way more than that. It should be more like 30 or even higher sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on what that offer is too. So I don't
Yeah,
think you did bad at all. That was the easiest. I don't know, whatever 750 times 7 is. That was the easiest money you've probably ever made sending
yeah,
off
yeah.
that email.
Yeah, definitely. And it was, eye-opening to see how effective it was. It was like pretty much sent it, one evening late in the day, and the next day I woke up to two or three people being like, "Yeah, absolutely." Um, but you're right. It definitely doesn't. Definitely doesn't. It isn't something that I do regularly. I think a part of this is the idea of like, maybe it's a bit of imposter syndrome. Do they care what I have to say? I mean, they hired you, so your professional opinion, sharing things like accessibility tips or just stuff like that. Like
I
you
think
said,
part of
giving.
it, yeah, I know that fear, and you're not the only one that has it. That's like the number one, I'll call it an excuse because we're friends. That's the number one excuse people give to not sending out emails is like, oh, I don't have time. Nobody really cares about it. Um, yes and no. So 100% transparency. I'm not sending emails for my agency right now because I'm not trying to grow the amount of leads through my agency right now. But I did for about 3 or 4 years, pretty solid every week. Open rate wasn't nearly as good as what it is for the admin bar where things are a little bit more engaged. I was probably in the 30 something percent of open rate. These were like mostly clients and then people who had like, downloaded lead magnets and things like that. I don't really care if they read the email every week. Like I would like them to, and I want to send them good information. So if they do open the email, they read it. What I want them to do is see my name every week. I just want them to remember I exist every week.
Yep.
Because when something comes up, I don't want them going, who was that guy we had do the website that one time and not remember who I am? Like they need to instantly remember me. And I can't tell you the number of times that I sent out emails and it wasn't a direct sales email or anything. It was just a newslettery type email. Let me share something I've learned with you. And I would end up getting a referral from that person. They would go, oh, you know what? My friend was talking about a website that reminded me. Your email in my inbox reminded me. I also had one customer in particular that's like one of my longtime care plan customers. He replied to the email every week. I think I've never broached the subject with him, but I think he thought I was just writing him a personal email every week at the same time with like a long story and a lesson. Because he would reply to the email as if I just wrote it to him, which was pretty awesome. And that's really what I'm going for. He's thinking I'm taking time out of my week every week to help him learn something about his business or marketing, whatever it may be. It's all that relationship building that's
Yeah.
just so huge. But I think just being top of mind for people, like the people I end up buying stuff from are the people that I end up seeing the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah. I mean,
And
it
good
goes back
luck
to,
getting seen on, posting on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. It just doesn't happen.
well, I mean, it's like, both of us have had success with a great deal of leads through YouTube, and that's from the breadth of content and showing up. I mean, I don't show up to the consistency that you do, but I have to imagine the same exact principle applies.
Sure.
So two questions about emailing clients specifically. I was thinking, is it just set up your from is just Kyle at Ogle Web or something like that, and
Yeah.
then is your message, does it look like a newsletter, or do you do like the plain text style?
Yeah, so I try to make it look as much as I possibly can like just an email from me, just like they'd get if I wrote them about their project or their website or whatever. So plain text email, I think, is best for this type of thing. There's exceptions, like the admin bars newsletter is not plain text. It's colored and got graphics and all those kinds of things, but it's a different audience. It's a different purpose and all that. And it is more of like a newsletter. Whereas what I was doing for my agency was much more nurturing, sending, more personable lesson story type emails, right? So I would do, yes, the from line said Kyle at Ogle Web, and I use my personal email address that they always email me from, and it was a plain text template that looked as close as I could get it to look like a normal email they would get from me any other day.
Just happen to have a little unsubscribe link in the bottom.
Yeah, but we understand that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
here we go. Today we'll give up the date on this podcast or date it. Today it got announced that the admin bar won best WordPress community for the third year in a
Yeehaw!
row. Super excited about that. Anyways, I got a text from my wife that said congratulations, and I'm like, how did she know about it? Well, of course I made her go vote. She's getting the emails from them, and I said, I don't know why you didn't unsubscribe from that. She's like, I don't know. It just never crossed her mind to like click the unsubscribe button at the bottom. My point in saying that is like most clients aren't going to even notice that that's a difference.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so because I actually at the time was using Mailchimp when I emailed those clients, and I did the plain text thing, and there just happened to be like a bunch of dashes, and then there was a little unsubscribe and like my address.
Yeah.
And just doesn't really look that odd, I don't think, to most people.
And the other part of that you mentioned, do people want to hear from you? That's one excuse people will use. I think maybe they do, maybe they don't, but the important thing is just being in front of them. And when you do have an offer, it being natural for you to email them. I know, like, when I've wanted to raise prices, right, into the year, and care plans need to go up and blah, blah. Well, if I hadn't been talking to you regularly and all of a sudden now hadn't talked to you in 6 months, but now I want money from you, that's kind of shitty. So
Yeah.
I think nurturing that relationship is good. When you want to offer SEO, boom, you don't know when those things are going to come up. So it's just so much easier if you've just been nurturing them all along. Now, the other part of this too is, yeah, it does take a lot of time, and you got to come up with content and all that. I think there's really no excuse with Nurture Copy. So if you go to nurturecopy.com, they have plans for it's emails specifically written for web agencies emailing their web agency clients. It's $20 a month. You get pre-written emails. You could literally copy and paste them, put them into your mailing system. You could go in there and tweak them if you want to. Sometimes I would. Sometimes I would just send them exactly as they come. So literally $20 a month is basically nothing to pay for that, and it's
Yeah.
done for you. So you don't have the excuse of I don't have time to do this either.
So no excuse for no time, no excuse for no content.
Yeah.
It's about it.
Yeah. So it's time to get to it.
So I'm curious, kind of in terms of some of the more specifics around how you do it. It might not apply so much for our agency clients because it's probably pretty straightforward. Everybody's in one big list and you just send. But I was curious for situations where you might have some segmented interest. With the admin bar side of things, you have your sign up in various places on your site, and like to join the Facebook group and stuff like that. So I was curious, do you do any segmentation, or is it just like you have the admin bar list and people subscribe? And quickly to follow up, the reason why I'm asking is like you also sell products, and people can, obviously you get an email address from that. Are they tied in? What happens if they unsubscribe? How do you manage all those kinds of things?
Yeah, that gets tricky. Again, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not the world's expert on this. I probably do a pretty poor job of it. I do try to do a good job of I use MailerLite for the admin bar, so they don't use a tag system, they use a group system. So I create groups for every kind of like entrance point into the list. So if you've bought a product from me, you've been tagged with like purchased and the product name, like tagged, you've been put in that group, right? So part of that is because I'll usually have some kind of like follow-up sequence, or you get some kind of email or whatever it may be. But also now I know, like, I have a list of everybody who bought XYZ. So if I put XYZ on sale, I know I can email everybody accept those people because I don't. They already
Right.
bought it. I don't want to try to sell it to them again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And people don't want to get emails that aren't applicable to them. So that personalization part is important. But even like if people sign up for some webinar, tag them for that. If people came in through, I have like a YouTube video lead magnet thing. Anytime somebody signs up from that, they get tagged into that system. So if let's say I release something new, generate blocks related, I could go find all those generate blocks related tags and just email the people I know for sure are interested in this and not the people who aren't. Like you said, when it comes to like your agency list, if it's like 100 people, that's probably not going to make a huge difference. The admin bars list is about 8,000 people now. I have to start thinking about how many people are going to mark this as spam or unsubscribe. Like it crosses my mind a little bit. So when I'm sending out something very specific, like generate blocks, and I know there's a good portion of the audience that doesn't use that and doesn't care, well, I don't want to send that to them because then I'm inviting them to spam it or quit paying attention to my emails or
Right.
unsubscribe. So when you can personalize those things, that's absolutely great. Now, our big newsletter, it just goes out to everybody. So
Yeah, yeah, okay. So I was curious about that because in ConvertKit there's like you have your I think it's list, segment, and tags. And list is like the top level, then you can segment people by like, maybe website if they signed up on the admin bar or my website or whatever. Um, but I was curious, is the groups in MailerLite set up in such a way that like let's say somebody bought the agency Copilot and you sent them an email and they unsubscribe from that, are they also now gone out of the newsletter group as well?
so you can prevent some of those things and like set it up where if you've ever unsubscribed for something and it takes you to one of those nag pages that just infuriate you and you just want to unsubscribe from everything, but it'll give you like to update your preferences, and sometimes emails will have that at the bottom, like next to the unsubscribe link is update your preferences, and you could pick which lists you're on. I didn't do a good enough job like architecting the admin bars structure for all that data for it to make sense. Like if you just saw the list of tags or groups on, from your end, you wouldn't know which ones to be a part of. So I didn't do a great job on that, but that is something definitely to consider, especially as you grow. Like some of these things seem, at least this was my mistake. Like they seemed really insignificant at the time, right? Like there wasn't that many people, it wasn't that big a deal. But then these things snowball over time. When there was just one product and there was just 100 people on the list, it was really easy to manage. But when there's 7 products and there's 7,000 people, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So I do have the problem of like people who have bought a product, started getting the newsletter, unsubscribed from the newsletter, and now they don't get the product updates anymore.
Right.
So you do have to be careful about those things, and I'm trying to fix some of those things in my system now where I've screwed that up. But yeah, I mean, future proofing is just so hard, and you don't know what you don't know when you start setting all this stuff up.
That's exactly the problem is I've had that many times. So I was wondering if there was some kind of best practice that you were aiming for, or maybe that you've seen in other communities or from other people with that particularly in mind, because it's like I want I want to be able to still reach those people if they bought a course of mine or a product of some kind and
Right.
there's an update. It's like, well, they unsubscribed from that, and then it also unsubscribed them from the main list. That funny enough, that happened to me when Breakdance came out. I unsubscribed from the Breakdance emails, but it also unsubscribed me from all the Oxygen emails, which I
Mm,
still would have gotten. For product updates, I was interested in that.
right.
So then it's like, well, you're gone from the whole thing, which wasn't intentional on my part, but surely people do that same thing for products and newsletters and stuff unintentionally.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I'm definitely not the best at haven't done the best job of all that. Like I said, I'm in MailerLite. That's where the admin bars list has always been. Really looking at moving everything over to ConvertKit, but I have a lot of anxiety about switching anything now. There's probably 200 automations inside my account, a couple hundred different groups people are in, 8,000 people or whatever. Like, it's a lot of moving parts, and all of that has to get moved over and migrated manually and make sure like every integration with something else that's putting people into the system gets moved over too. It's like, man, this is a total freaking nightmare it makes me nervous just to think about.
There would be so many things that you would forget about. Some website, some subdomain, or
Yeah.
some form automation or something. Definitely, that would be a huge battle. Yeah. So I mean, I think a big thing for me moving forward into 2024 is really trying to eliminate the things on my plate in general that I can't be consistent with, and trying to hone in just a couple of channels, specifically marketing channels, both for the WordPress kind of YouTube side and the product side, as well as the agency side. Um, and an email, just I've seen some decent success with it, even with my inconsistency. So it's like, if it was just a little bit more focused and a little bit more regular, I know it would be so much more. And I've said this in many other streams before, but it's kind of insane, specifically with email, how the numbers don't need to be that big.
Mm-mm.
Like, you could have a list of 500 people and make a very, very substantial amount of money and make people happy by sharing cool stuff. Like, imagine a room of 500 people.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot of people to be making a presentation to.
For sure. And, I think we all have the imposter syndrome of like, these people, I'm sure they already saw it. Like, I already posted on Facebook, so they already saw it. Well, chances are they didn't see it. Like,
Hmm.
just because you posted it once on Facebook doesn't mean they saw it. So I think a lot of people are probably missing out on things you're creating and things they want to see and things they want to be involved in just because they never got the notification. And email is just such a great way to hand deliver it to them. You're not worried about an algorithm that's either going to show it or not show it, or want you to pay for people to be able to see it, whatever that might be. Email's just, you still have some control over it. You own your list. There's just so many benefits to it. I feel like it has to be a part of that recipe, whether you're doing Facebook or YouTube or whatever all these other thing is. I feel like so many people are missing out by not doing something with email.
Yeah, I mean, it's like kind of crazy because I know you know this, but when you run a Facebook group, you can see the number of people that have seen a post, and it's really crazy to see, just with no real rhyme or reason. Some posts will just do super well, and the vast majority of people in the group will come across it, and then others, it's like, I was really stoked on that post, or it got a lot of engagement, but it only reached 300 people. Like, it's very interesting how that happens. And I mean, the same is true for YouTube videos. Sometimes it's just like, whatever reason, the algorithm was just a dud. Then, like you said, send an email, and it's like probably 50% of the people will open it in the first 12 hours or 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane for an engaged list, anyway.
Yeah, and it's like platform agnostic, all those kinds of things. I do wonder, like, younger generations, are they going to use email in the same way we've kind of used email? Maybe not. I don't know. My son doesn't seem to use email that much. He uses other ways to communicate with people, so that's something to consider as well. But I see that all the time in the group. Like, if you post a link inside the post of a Facebook post, that was not a good sentence. If you use a link inside your Facebook post, it will often not push that post out to as many people. I assume that's because Facebook doesn't want you to leave their platform
Yeah.
and go look at whatever that link is, right? So a lot of times you'll see people say whatever they want to say in the post, maybe use an image in the post, and then say the link's in the first comments. And that's why they do it, because it's probably going to go out to more people. But you're just so beholden to all of them for those things, where you're not with email. And it's not like you got to do one exclusively, but email's just such a, I don't know, to me it feels way more powerful, and like I have way more control over it. And if Facebook shut down the admin bar tomorrow, I could reach like 90% of those people via email immediately.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have that email list, it'd just be over. Like, the whole thing would just be done. Worked on it for 6 years, every day for multiple hours a day, and it would just be gone.
Vaporized. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, you'd be able to migrate to wherever made sense after that, no matter what happens to those platforms.
Yeah,
Or
I mean, if you told me get rid of everything except one thing, I would keep the email list.
so that was kind of a question I already knew the answer to, but I thought it would be interesting just to ask. Like, if you were to go backward, knowing what you know now, what would you focus on?
Yeah.
And that's email. Do
And
you?
actually, the email list wasn't a huge focus of the admin bar for a long time, until the admin bar got to a point where, like, I was actually making an income off of it and having to, like, think about it in a business way rather than just a fun way. And I'm like, holy crap, like, this is all dependent on Facebook. Like,
Yeah.
people, I mean, you tell most people, I think we have like this unique circle of, like, well, we're probably connected through Facebook, but there's a lot of us WordPress people that are on Facebook. But if I just go out and talk with the general public, most people aren't using Facebook that much. It's not like it's not TikTok expanding, it's probably shrinking. So Probably not the best thing to build your business on top of. So that kind of freaked me out. I'm like, okay, I have to have some kind of parity between the Facebook group and an email list that I can at least have some kind of control of. I've not been able to catch the email list quite up to the group, but pretty close to it.
Well, I mean, the I guess important thing for anybody watching that's in the agency space, like it probably doesn't make sense for you to run a Facebook group unless maybe somehow miraculously you're extremely niched and you have one specific kind of client. That might work. Um, so it kind of goes back to the fact that the email list is still just going to be top of the pile. Um, do you have multiple different brands that you manage emails for? You have your agency side and admin bar and that kind of thing. Do you have totally separate MailerLite accounts for those things?
Yeah, so actually my agency list is all through ConvertKit, so it's a
Oh, okay,
completely
okay.
different account. But yeah, I've kept all those separate, just so there's not crossover because they all are separate things, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've all been kept separate. But even with we talked about like kind of segmenting and stuff. You can do that with the agency as well. Like I know when I want to go on vacation, uh, every now and then, I'll want to send an email out to all my customers letting them know the days I'm going to be gone and this and that. Well, if you tagged who's actually a customer inside of your email marketing, it'd be easier to do something like a mass mailing to all those people, or even tag them with specific services. So like if you do care plans for these people and SEO for these people or whatever it may be, have all that stuff inside you're kind of using it as a CRM at that point, but that way you're able to send relevant information to people at a moment's notice, essentially, or send things that are relevant to them. So I think there's still a good use case for that, even for agencies, just probably
Well,
at a smaller scale.
I mean, those hitting on those touch points, just staying engaged and sharing with people what's going on, maybe industry trends or what you're up to or what they can look forward to, anything like that, kind of goes back to what you said at the very beginning about then when you need to reach out with an offer, they're like, okay,
Yeah.
I hear from him all the time, him or her all the time.
Yeah, it's not awkward at that point because
Yeah.
I do feel awkward if I've not talked to somebody forever and then the first thing I say to them is like, "Hey, I need your help."
Well, I mean, I have a couple of care plan clients who are on this legacy $75 a month plan that's just everything under the sun, and it's been that way since like probably 2018 or 2019. But most of these people I very rarely hear from, and there's an element of not wanting to rock the boat, but also like they basically never need anything, but the costs have gone. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
definitely tough. It's exactly what you said, where it's like haven't talked to him in a while, so you can't really hit him up to ask about a care plan increase. And then that comes the other part of being afraid that they might cancel. They're like, oh, I don't even use this.
Yeah. But I mean, think about we've all had, if you've been doing this long enough, you've had customers leave you, right? The first thing, I mean, no matter, unless they're just the worst client, you have a client leave, and the first thing you feel is that like pit in your stomach, like, oh, damn it, I lost it. Like, it sucks to lose a client. And the first thing I always think is, well, like, what was I doing to keep them? And if I can't make a good list of reasons, you know, yeah, some other agency came in and nurtured them better than I was nurturing them. And of course they went over there because even though that agency, I went and looked them up and they suck and they don't do good work and all those things, that's almost not important. Like the quality of your work almost doesn't matter at that
Yeah.
point because somebody else was willing to like take the time to spend with them. And I just think you're going to have a lot less of that if you're really engaged with your clients. And like I said, even if they're not reading every word of it, just knowing that you're there and you're consistent and you're working on the things that they don't have to think about.
Yeah, it's interesting because my intent with reaching out to you was the like specifics of email marketing, but it's like there's actually a more nuanced conversation around it. It's like there's so many other facets that all kind of tie into it. And also, despite the fact that you have many products and thousands of people on your list, it doesn't sound that complicated. So I think I'm sitting here looking at it with a list that's, like 1/5 of that being like, oh, this is too much. I don't know what to do with it. But it's like I don't know. It's more simple than it seems, I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not doing enough, so there's probably a happy medium in between the hellscape you're envisioning of complication and where I'm at. There's probably like somewhere in between there that would be a good landing spot for all of us, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like, you know, send good things to people. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Send things people want to hear. And that other stuff will kind of work itself out, I think, for the most part. I mean, complicate it later. You know what I mean? You can always, like, even where I'm at with my list, where I had told you about some of the shortcomings of like people, the way they unsubscribe from this and not finding that and all those kinds of things. Like, yeah, those are things I need to work out. But if I would have never started because I didn't have those things worked out, I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am now. You know what I mean? So make sure the main thing is the main thing. And the main thing with email marketing is just sending people emails they want to read. So if you can do that, then you can figure out all that other stuff later.
That's what I'm gonna make the title of this video. Just send people cool stuff, I think is what you said.
Yeah, something like that. It doesn't have
It's
to be
it's
more complicated than that.
it's so dead simple. Yeah.
And depending, it's, I think the hard part is like really understanding your audience. Like for my agency, nurture copy was the answer for sending out those emails. I could write some of those things, not probably as well as they do, but I could write some of those topics and I could come up with those ideas. And now that we got AI, it could help generate ideas and things like that. But like, I don't I don't understand your general business owner because I don't have a really tight niche in my customer base as it sits. I don't know exactly what to send them. Now with the admin bar, like I am the audience, so I know what to send there. But that's a huge part of it too, is just knowing what's going to be applicable to people. And Nurture Copy just does, this sounds like a commercial for them, and I guess it kind of is, but they just do such a good job. It's way too easy to not do. Like pay $20 a month, copy and paste it into your email marketing thing, and that's it. And then when you have something you want to push out, you can feel good about doing it.
Yeah, that reminded me of another question I wanted to ask but forgot, which was just around your workflow with coming up with admin bar topics. Obviously, there's so many people, myself included, that are just like, "Damn, you just nailed me on the head this week." And I was just curious how you consistently come up with that stuff. Like, do you batch stuff out and are you ahead of time, or like what does your workflow look
And
like?
you think a lot more of me than is actually true.
I'm
Actually,
trying to let you hit it out of the park.
no, I'm actually a couple emails ahead right now, only because Jonathan has been shaming me about my work-life balance, and I'm trying to take some time off over the Christmas break. And the admin bar doesn't stop, unfortunately. Like, fortunately and unfortunately, like, just because it's Christmas doesn't mean I'm not going to have people posting crap in the group that I have to moderate. I've sold sponsorship spots in all these newsletters, so the newsletter's got to go out whether it's Christmas or not. So I have tried to get a little bit ahead, but yeah. So my natural process is the newsletter goes out to a select group of people on Thursday, and then the big list on Friday. So I basically need to have the intro to the newsletter, which is all my copywriting part of it. It has to be done sometime on Wednesday in order for me to get all that done. So it's usually me trying to come up with ideas through the week as like I'm just, stuff happens. You read the emails, so it's like, something happens with my kids and I'll equate that, or something, here or there. The oddest thing will inspire me, but it's most of the time I wake up on Wednesday morning saying, "Oh my God, I got to come up with something." And I walk down and I get to the computer and I freak out and I write some things and I'm like, "Holy crap, this is no good." And then I start trying to find excuses of like why I couldn't do an intro this week and why I'm just skipping the intro in this week's newsletter, and we'll catch back up next week. And then I realize that's totally lame. I can't do that. And then something will strike and I'll actually get it put out in just the nick of time. So that's really the process, which is terrible and frightening and anxiety inducing pretty much every week. But when we go back to the point about like who you're writing for, the reason you've read newsletters and said it felt like I was talking exactly to you is because most of the time what I'm writing is just like to myself, like, notes to self of things I need to improve or get better in, or shortcomings I have or whatever. And we're just all kind of in the same boat. So maybe it doesn't land with you that way every week, but if I do it enough times, it will land with you because we're all kind of doing the same thing. And really, I'm just writing to myself. It's like therapy every week, essentially.
So it's like the opposite of a workflow then.
Yeah, it's chaotic for sure. I have trouble working off of like I don't know, doing my best work if it's just off a list. Like we were talking about this in a meeting earlier. I had planned out the rest of the year's YouTube videos. I put them in a Notion doc. It was like the title of every one of them is like 50 videos, and that's what I was going to do for the rest of the year. And I made it about a week and a half with that list and never looked at it again because I was so uninspired by it. I've still continued to keep up the pace of videos I wanted to put out, but it's just been off of like inspiration. So I work so much better off of like what feels good to do right now. So I've just been trying to like lean into that more and say, okay, Wednesday morning when I wake up, I will panic and I will have no idea what I'm going to do. And by Wednesday afternoon, I will have written something good enough to send out in the newsletter.
I wonder how many people are like that, because I definitely relate to the when you're under pressure, it sometimes ends up you push out your best work and that spark of inspiration just shows up. Wonder how many people are like that, because there are people like my girlfriend. She is like a planner. Like
Mm.
we're going to my mom's house in a few weeks for Christmas, and I didn't really know what the deal was, and my mom sent this detailed email, and she just responded and said, "Thank you so much. My planner self loves this." And I was just like, "Oh, well, whatever. Just show up and do it." But
Yeah.
I think that's like it's a blessing and a curse in some ways, especially in business. Like just let things, sort of run to the last possible second and get them done most of the time. And yeah, yeah. So anyway, I wonder how many people are like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely that way. I guess on some things. I mean, I have got the newsletter out every week. It's just I don't know what's going to be in it until usually the last minute. But also, I think part of it's just like tuning yourself into the frequencies of like finding that inspiration, because it does just come anywhere, and it's not always at the most opportune time. Like often it's in the shower or driving in the car or wake up in the middle of the night, and it's like, okay, that's the idea. So you have to like stop and write that down somewhere. But I think part of that is just like being looking for those opportunities all the time, like being aware that it could happen at any time and being open to receive those, those inspiration pieces anytime they come up, because you just never know when they're going to happen.
I guess another important consideration too is comparing, the tab newsletter to like running one for your agency is maybe a degree of incentivization. Is that a word? Incentive to it, because of course you have the barflies and you have sponsors. So there's a certain level of expectation just kind of baked in now. But maybe rewinding the clock, like but before that popped up, before it was a component of the business that had a financial incentive. I mean, indirectly, it absolutely does for your agency, but it probably won't feel that way for a while. So I
Yeah.
was just thinking about like staying inspired and staying committed to it is tough. I struggle with that. So curious if you remember, early on how you kept
Yeah.
up that consistency.
I mean, now I do have the accountability of I have sponsorships paid for through like October or November of next year. So the newsletter will come out the next like 50 weeks for sure, because I've already been paid to do it. And that's definitely kept me on track many weeks when I probably wouldn't have done it. So I think part of it is like realizing that the consistency thing is huge, and people are going to trust you more the more consistent you are. Like, do you trust the mailman that shows up every day at 2 o'clock and delivers the mail, or just the people that show up randomly? Like, there's just something about being consistent that makes you trust people more. It also, the email thing, if you design it well enough, the email can funnel people out to a blog post. The blog post can come from some video. Or you could take, let's say, one video and turn it into a blog post and a podcast and an email and everything, and repurpose all this stuff. So I think part of it's figuring out like what is that flow for everything. But the admin bars newsletter really started out of like there was a problem. So people told me, this was maybe 2,000 people in the group, so it was much smaller, but they said there's so many good posts in the group, but I can't spend all day in Facebook and I feel like I'm
Mm,
going to miss something cool.
yep.
I'm like, okay, well, how do I solve that? Yeah, people don't need to live in Facebook all day long. I'm like, well, what if I just sent them the best articles from the week? And it was like, hey, that sounds easy enough. So that's what I started doing. So there was almost kind of like a little bit of a demand for it, which helped. Not that I anticipated what it would be, but again, that's kind of like looking for those opportunities. Like, where can I solve this issue, whatever it may be? We have a lot of customers that don't realize all the things we could be doing for them. There's a big opportunity in that. They
Mm.
don't realize how important Google My Business is, or schema markup on their website, or email marketing, that they could be sending email marketing or whatever it may be. So there's a lot of opportunities there for customers, for you to help your customers and to make more money. So like keeping a lookout for all those opportunities. And the email, if you email frequently enough, it becomes kind of like a playground to experiment with all these things too, and figure out what works, what doesn't work. I think writing that much has helped me figure out like how is my tone of voice and my messaging and all those kinds of things. Like, I've just wrote enough now that I feel a lot more confident in that. So it's beneficial in so many ways. But yeah, staying consistent is hard, and you do have to have some kind of accountability built in there.
Real quick, because I know we're running up on your time stop here. I was wondering what was the sequence of admin bar like kind of properties that started popping up. Was the outset the Facebook group, then an email, and then YouTube?
Yeah, so I think it started out as the Facebook group, and then right after that was podcast,
On YouTube,
uh, and then
right? Or
do
everywhere?
what?
On YouTube or everywhere?
It was just straight audio podcast. I think at first, I think we were recording the video and just publishing it inside of Facebook, but also sending out like through Castos the podcast feed. So it was getting uploaded as a podcast to everybody's podcast players, and then we started putting them on YouTube because why not? We already have the video or whatever. And then the email definitely came later. I think there for a while I might have been collecting some emails but not doing much with it until that kind of story I just told you about the newsletter thing. That's how the newsletter started 163 weeks ago or whatever. At this point, it was literally a comment in the group like, we've had that happen several times. People, could never find like references for things and who in the group was specialist in what. So we created the job board for that. It was like, how do we solve this problem? So part of that's just like looking for those problems and trying to solve them too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's almost like being so close to the problem you can't even see it yourself.
Yeah,
That's definitely a part of it.
that's a huge
Well,
issue.
I appreciate you joining me as always. I really just wanted to reach out because partly accountability, partly just wanting to talk to somebody further ahead of me in this journey, but also I realized during our conversation and prior to that, like the email can basically benefit everybody, no matter what business you're in. It will contribute more than you could ever imagine. And take that from me having about this much consistency compared to about this much of Kyle's consistency. It's like, it's just it's very impressive.
Yeah, I mean it's like I said. There's no doubt it's the one thing that if you just let me keep one thing, it would be that. And like product launches that we've done and all that, the success of those were because of the email list, because I could send emails. And I know I've shared with you before too. Like there's been some campaigns where I tracked like how many of these sales came through the post in the group versus the email, and it's never close. It's never even in the same ballpark. Email's always so far ahead of all of it.
If that doesn't speak volumes, then I don't know what is. So consistency and what was our catchphrase? Post cool
Just
shit,
write
people.
good stuff.
Yeah, just write good stuff.
Just write good stuff. It's that simple.
Thanks, Kyle.
Absolutely.